Hey everyone, and welcome back to Book Peer. I'm Paul. Today we're diving into a book that really makes you think about those everyday things you do almost without realizing it.
It's the power of habit.
Yeah. You ever just find yourself brushing your teeth or scrolling on your phone like you're on autopilot? Well, that's the power of habit, and this book really breaks it down. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is like this peek behind the curtain of your own brain.
Definitely. And we're going to cover some really cool stuff today, so make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Book Peer for more insightful book summaries. Okay, so the book starts off with this core concept called the habit loop. And it's a 3-step process. It's like a recipe your brain follows without even realizing it.
A recipe.
Well, yeah, that's like cue, routine, reward. For example, imagine your alarm goes off. That's the cue. Then you grab your phone. That's the routine. And then you get that little dopamine hit from checking social media.
Oh, that's the reward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you've been scrolling for like an hour.
And it's incredible how this loop gets like hardwired into our brains.
Right.
Our brains are always looking for shortcuts and ways to save effort, so they create these pathways that make repeating actions easier. Kind of like when you're walking through a forest.
Oh, like a path in the woods.
Yeah. The more you take the same path, the more worn down it gets.
Makes sense. So if that grab your phone routine becomes a habit, it can be tough to break, even if you know it's not the best way to start your day.
Exactly, and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
The book actually dives into how companies have figured out how to engineer cravings to get us hooked on their products.
Wait, what? Tell me more about that.
Well, think about Pepsodent toothpaste.
Okay.
They added ingredients to create that tingling sensation when you brush.
Right.
And people started craving that tingle and associating it with feeling clean.
So like a conditioned response almost.
Yeah. And suddenly brushing became a habit driven by that engineered craving.
Wow, that's crazy. It really shows you how powerful cravings can be. I mean, companies use it to their advantage, but we can also use that same knowledge to create good habits too.
Absolutely.
And speaking of which, this book doesn't just tell you how habits work. It actually gives you like tools to change them. There's this thing called the golden rule of habit change.
The golden rule.
Yeah, and it focuses on keeping the cue and the reward the same but changing the routine. So let's say you're stressed and you always reach for a bag of chips.
Classic stress eating.
Right. The cue is the stress. The reward is feeling better. But the routine is that unhealthy part. So you keep the stress, you keep wanting to feel better, but instead of chips, you go for a walk or call a friend or something like that.
Exactly. It's about finding a healthier way to get that same reward.
I like that.
And this is actually a technique used by groups like Alcoholics Anonymous to help people overcome addiction.
It's really powerful stuff. So if any of you out there are trying to break a bad habit, leave us a comment below. Maybe we can brainstorm some new routines together.
That's a great idea. And there's also this concept of keystone habits.
Keystone habits.
Yeah, they're habits that have this ripple effect.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they create these positive changes in other areas of your life.
So like how making exercise a regular habit might lead you to eat healthier sleep, better, even feel more confident.
Exactly. And the book tells a story about a CEO who transformed his entire company just by focusing on worker safety as a keystone habit.
Interesting. So he kind of saw that as like the foundation.
Yeah, he believed prioritizing safety would lead to better productivity and efficiency across the board.
I like that. It makes you wonder, what's your keystone habit?
Yeah.
What's that one thing that could have a positive impact on everything else? Something to think about, for sure. And hey, if you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to Book Peer for more thought-provoking book discussions. So we've talked about how habits work, how companies use them, and how we can change them. But what about willpower? Where does that fit into all of this? I mean, we all know that feeling of trying to resist temptation or stick to a new routine, and sometimes it feels impossible, like our willpower just runs out.
Right. Well, the book describes willpower like a muscle. It gets tired if you overuse it, but you can strengthen it with practice, too. It's not that some people are just born with more willpower.
Right.
It's that they've trained themselves to be better at using it.
So it's like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just start by running 20 miles, right? You'd gradually build up your endurance.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Be patient with yourself when it comes to willpower. Start small, focus on one habit at a time, and celebrate those small wins.
That's great advice. Okay, so far we've covered habit loops, sneaky marketing tricks, changing routines, keystone habits, and willpower. What else does this book explore? Because it seems like there's a lot to unpack here.
Though it also talks about how even crises can play a role in habit formation.
Crises. Really, that sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
How can something bad lead to good habits?
Well, crises disrupt our routines and force us to rethink how we do things. The book tells the story about Rhode Island Hospital.
Okay.
They had this problem with medical errors.
Oh.
Because nobody felt comfortable speaking up if they saw something wrong.
So they had all these bad habits ingrained in the system.
Yes, but then a major crisis happened.
Oh, no.
And they were forced to completely overhaul everything.
Wow.
They created new procedures that actually empowered nurses to speak up,
That's good.
which made a huge difference in patient safety.
So the crisis became a catalyst for positive change. So like it broke them free from those old habits and gave them a chance to create better ones.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how sometimes a little shakeup can be what we need to make real lasting change in our lives.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, and there's one more thing we have to talk about. It's the way companies use our habits to influence us, which can get a little creepy, honestly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like when you're thinking about buying something,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you're seeing ads for it everywhere. It's like they're reading our minds.
Well, they kind of are.
Right.
Companies are using data to track our online behavior, our purchases, our preferences. They use all of that to predict and influence our habits.
It makes you wonder, are those targeted ads helpful or just plain creepy?
Yeah.
Let us know what you think in the comments.
It's a tricky question. I mean, on the one hand, personalized recommendations can be helpful, but there's a fine line between being helpful and being manipulative.
Totally. Because if they know our habits that well, they can definitely exploit them.
Right.
So we have to be aware of that and make sure we're in control of our own choices.
I think that's really important.
Definitely. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this episode, from the science of habit formation to the ethics of companies using our data. This book really makes you think about the forces that shape our lives.
It's a great book.
Yeah. And if you want to learn more, we highly recommend checking it out. And don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to Book Peer for more insightful book summaries.
You know something else that's interesting?
What's that?
The book also talks about how habits play a huge role in social movements.
Social movements, like protests and things like that. How do habits fit into that?
Well, think about what it takes for a movement to gain momentum. People need to come together, share a common goal, and most importantly, take consistent action.
So it's not just about one person doing something. It's about a collective effort, everyone being on board.
Exactly. And the book uses the example of the Montgomery bus boycott, which started with Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat.
Oh, yeah.
That single act of defiance sparked a movement.
That's such a powerful moment in history. It's incredible how one person's actions can have such a huge impact.
It was a pivotal moment for sure. But what really made the boycott successful was the entire Black community coming together and supporting it.
So it wasn't just her.
No, they collectively changed their routines.
Like how?
They chose to walk instead of riding the bus.
Wow. And that collective change in habit put immense pressure on the system.
Exactly.
And ultimately led to a major victory in the fight for civil rights.
It did.
It's amazing to think that those small individual choices can create a ripple effect, leading to something much bigger than ourselves.
That's the power of social movements. They harness the power of shared habits to create lasting change.
So it's not just about changing our own personal habits. It's also about recognizing how our habits can contribute to something much greater.
That's a great point.
So we've talked about the science of habit formation, how to change habits, the role of willpower, the impact of crises, and even the influence of companies. Is there anything else?
Well, we've also seen the power of habits in social movements.
Wow, this has been a fascinating conversation. It's a lot to take in,
It is.
but it's also relevant to our lives.
It really is.
What are some key takeaways you think listeners should remember?
I think the most important takeaway is that habits are not set in stone. We have the power to change them.
We do.
It might not be easy, but it's definitely possible.
That's encouraging. So what's the key?
Well, the key is understanding that habit loop, the cue routine reward cycle,
Right.
and finding ways to disrupt it and create new, healthier patterns.
I see. What about belief?
Oh, that's important too.
How so?
Whether it's belief in yourself, a higher power, or a supportive community, having that faith can make a huge difference.
That's powerful. And this book really drives home the point that small changes can lead to big results.
It does.
It's about identifying those keystone habits that have a positive ripple effect in other areas of our lives. And remember, willpower is like a muscle. You can strengthen it with practice. So don't get discouraged if you stumble along the way. Just keep at it.
Habit change is a journey, not a destination.
I like that. If you could change just one habit today, what would it be? Think about that one thing that's been holding you back or preventing you from living your best life. It could be anything. That late-night snacking habit, procrastinating on a project, or constantly checking your phone. Whatever it is, remember that change is possible. Think back to the habit loop, the golden rule of habit change, and the power of belief. Start small, be patient with yourself, and celebrate every little victory. And who knows, that one small change could have a ripple effect leading to positive transformations in all areas of your life. So that's it for today's deep dive into the power of habit. We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
It really is a fascinating book.
Yeah, and if you're ready to explore this topic further, we highly encourage you to check out the book for yourself. And don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to Book Peer for more engaging book summaries. Until next time, happy reading.